Hello, my name is Luke Green, and I've been previously known as Thriftland, and I'm still known as such in some places. This is another video where I discuss on how to create various character concepts that might be considered unusual or special snowflakes, while avoiding homebrew and third-party material pretty much entirely. I have nothing against the third-party material or homebrew. I do quite a bit of it myself, being a self-publishing game designer. But that is something you need to go over with your individual GM. It is not something that advice on a video on the internet is going to be the best place to go. This is what I'm going to do is what I'm doing here is how to come to a framework of thinking to get around the official mechanics. Now, what we're going to focus on here again is the Dungeons and Dragons 5e 5th edition. I haven't done another one yet. I might do one just to change it up a little bit. And I'm going to do a concept here that I call the Team Mistress, which is basically I came to the idea from a character that I made up for a modern-based storyline where she was half Oni, and as a child witnessed her mother get her Oni father to relinquish all claim to her by tricking him with a tea ceremony. Ever since then, she's been obsessed with teas and collecting any kind of tea recipe or mix secrets she can, magical, normal, whatever. And among other things, she had a tea that made her look human. But in general, as far as I know, tea ceremony does not actually have any magical connotations. But I liked the idea of that idea, the using the wit, drawing people into a ceremony that is disguised as just a basic tea ceremony, and something magic that's bound up in manners and cultures and propriety, and it's hidden in the proper ways of behavior. And so the focus is going to be ritual, propriety, culture, and that obsession with collecting the knowledge of different magical recipes. Now, this is a little bit odd for D&D. D&D magic is usually very spectacular. Not always, but usually it is very spectacular. This is kind of more a low magic, urban fantasy type thing, where the magic itself is kind of slow, and you might not be doing the magic in the middle of a combat, which we'll get to later. But we are going to talk a little bit right now, because this does present a challenge. That challenge is holding to this concept of all your magic being focused around the use of teas and the performance of these ceremonies. Holding to that concept and that theme, while also remaining effective to the party. There are too many people out there that call themselves role players or get labeled as role players, who will come up with a very thematic character and will become problematic because they will build in ways that are ineffective because it matches their theme. And they will refuse to conceive of rethinking the way their theme works in order to make their character functional in a combat, or not necessarily combat, functional in the particular game that you're building it for. Like this character that I got this idea from was come up with for fiction, not a game. So I had to do a lot of reworking to make her for a game, which I haven't actually gotten to play her yet. Now, there are some class possibilities. If we were doing Pathfinder, the Pathfinder version of Dungeons & Dragons, we would immediately go to the Alchemist, but that's more grenades and explosives and things you don't drink, strange chemicals. It's a little bit out of that. I'm focusing on more the Bard, the Cleric, the Druid, the Wizard, and a little bit odd, the Ranger. And we're going to start with the one that is probably the one you would think of first as the Wizards, except for it's not very much focused on culture and that kind of thing. Not going to have very high charisma, which is something you want for this type of character. Wisdom would also be very good for this type of character because, being able to have a good patience and all that. Wizard could work, but the other main thing about it is a lot of its magic is very spectacular, and avoiding spectacular magic kind of cuts out a lot of the benefits of playing a wizard. So probably not a wizard. Druid works because a lot of their magic is based off of herbs and stuff and nature and all that, so it could work. But again, you're going to be cutting out a lot of the capabilities of the druid class if you want to stick to the theme somewhat strictly. You could do like a circle of the land, or rather than a circle of the moon, and not use the wild shaping so much because wild shaping doesn't really fit into the concept. And also, a lot of the spells don't really fit into the concept. So druid is kind of eh. Cleric works. A lot of clerics even in D&D range from very spectacular wizard-like magic to very subtle, did they actually cast anything, I can't tell magic like you get in Lord of the Rings. So the cleric actually works for this concept. It doesn't quite have that fascination on collecting lore, though, so it's not a first choice for me. For a more combative type version of this, the Ranger works good because they have a lot of personal buffs that could be representative of drinking tea. They have a lot of herbal-based things, but they don't really have a wide range. And notice I have English tea ceremonies pictures up here too, because this is kind of representative of any culture that has a high tea culture. But the Ranger doesn't have quite a range of magical abilities, so it's kind of limited. It doesn't really have that trickery aspect that came up with my original seed for the concept. Bard is my preferred. Lots of magic, wide range of spell access, and their side abilities like the Song of Rest are based on relaxation and inspiration. Instead of being magic and music in this case, you would be serving tea to the other party members as your Song of Rest. Instead of having a musical instrument, you probably would have a tea set, though this would be up to the GM. You probably might still have musical instrument because music is a part of many tea ceremonies and playing music. Which comes to spell choices. Let's start with rituals and spells with casting times of 10 minutes or longer. These represent full tea ceremonies. Now, to be perfectly honest, a tea ceremony actually will take hours. You brewing the tea, tasting the tea, going outside and talking, coming back inside, having a new set of tea, commenting on the art that was chosen, setting up the art that was chosen in the beginning. Actual tea ceremonies take hours. But for the concept here, choosing spells that take 10 minutes or more, or spells that are capable of being cast as rituals, represents a shortened tea ceremony that fits with the theme. The other thing is buff spells or healing spells that you could use to represent, here, I have this bottle of tea I brewed earlier, drink this. And Bard is good for that because they have a lot of buffing abilities. A lot of them are also often touch-based, touch range, so you have to go over and touch someone to do it, which could represent you taking a bottle of tea off your bandolier and handing it over. Now, this bandolier of tea is just going to be sort of a concept. This is your arcane focus. It's like your spell slots. Now you have to do on making it work. Your character is going to focus on buffing, healing, non-combat magic. You might want to grab a handful of is it really magic type spells like Vicious Mockery, maybe Dissonant Whispers, Suggestion, things that your character is a spellcaster and most of their magic does get worked into a ritual, but maybe they know a little bit how to twist that little piece of magic out of the ritual and use it in more instant need situations. You want a couple of those so that you have some options in magic that you can use to do stuff in battle. But most of your magic focus with this concept is going to be non-combat. Negotiations, trickery, illusions, divinations, that kind of thing. That's mostly what you're going to be focusing on as a tea master, tea mistress. So your magic is not going to be your big combat thing, which we come to, what do you do in combat? Again, you have buffing, you have healing, and bards have a fairly reasonable selection of weapon capability. You also could go for the Bard of Valor, which for this character I did because she's half Oni, and she ranges from blue Oni to red Oni depending on her mood. And so I gave her Bard College of Valor when I statted her up in theory because of the idea of her being very combat oriented. But if you wanted to do really hit heavily the collection of magic and lore, you would do lore. There are some other bardic colleges that have come up through the Unearthed Arcana that are official. Some of them are in playtest. Also notice the bandolier of tea bottles that she has. So there are other colleges you can do. But the lore and the valor work really well for this concept, especially since samurai doing tea ceremony or British lords doing tea ceremony is very much a little side thing of warrior culture in those two cultures. And this is one way to do this particular type of of reworking, reskinning. Um, it's a very particular flavor of a bard, basically. That they are still very culturally focused, but it's going to be the focus on performing this act of this tea ceremony, um, and weaving some magic into it. I'm going to be doing a couple of these, of course, reworking, reskinning the existing magic effects to fit thematic magic that is not necessarily immediately apparent to the setting that it is chosen for. But I think this works for now. And again, the challenge whenever you're doing a thematic or unusual concept is in making it work. If you don't make it work, if you don't make it effective, if you sacrifice capability for theme, you're ruining the fun for other people. So you have to be aware of what other people, of being able to hold up your end of the party. If your capability is mostly non-combat related, that is fine. Try to do some things in combat. If you have a lot of non-combat ability, that you are able to do a lot for your party outside of combat, you're still being effective. Just be aware that you have to fill a niche. If your theme is so narrow, if your concept character is so narrowed in their concept that they can't effectively add to anything, you need to rework your character. And that is going to be it for this particular special Snowflake. See you later.